We knew this was coming. To cover up for a multitude, a smorgasbord, a charcuterie of failures, the Brandon administration is set to forgive more student debt and extend the payment pause another 4 months. So this means $10,000 will be completely forgiven for those who make less than $125,000 per year. And yes, that is the largest amount of federal student loan forgiveness handed out to date. I think y'all can probably guess how I and everyone else out there who busted our own butts to pay off our own debt feel about this. This isn't just a slap in the face to those who already paid off our debts, but what about the over 70% of Americans without a degree?
It's back. You might have missed it. We haven't heard it in a while, but it's back. The argument you all know and love has made its triumphant return. How will we pay for it? And how is it being employed this time? In response to Biden's student debt cancellation.
Why should the rest of the taxpayers in this country, the ones who likely had to forego spring break vacations, AirPods, and Golden Goose shoes due to the price of tuition, be forced to pick up the tab for students who likely spent between 4 and 6 years boozing, fratting, or organizing sit-ins against Donald Trump? If these Democrats actually gave a hoot about the inflated cost of anything, let alone college tuition, they get the federal government out of the student loan business and force these institutions to be price competitive.
Last week, the Biden administration announced plans to cancel up to $10,000 worth of student debt for people making $125,000 or less, and up to $20,000 if those same people received a Pell Grant, which goes to help paying for college for people who don't make a lot of money. That's good, right? I think you all agree that canceling student debt is a good idea. There's about $1.7 trillion worth of student debt in this country, spread out around 40 or so million people. That's really bad. The average debt burden is around $30,000. It's a lot of money for somebody to owe for education, especially when that education is required to get most career jobs. Sure, you can find a job in a trade and you can circumvent college, and that's good. We should invest in those trades, but that's not all the jobs, and most of them require a bachelor's degree, and sometimes even more, increasingly even more. So you have a ton of people with these degrees that they were told they needed to advance in their careers. That's important, right? So we're told. So now we have this massive debt problem, and Biden makes one small step to alleviate some of the debt for some people. And there's a lot of people who had their debt wiped out if it was $10,000 or $20,000 or less. Good for them. I'm happy for them. They can then go on and live their life. They're not carrying this debt around. That's a good idea. And Republicans are really upset about it. They have a ton of different complaints. It's unfair. It'll increase inflation. You should just pay it off yourself, get a job, which on the Tomi Lahren front is hilarious because we all just can't get jobs with our parents. But she's paid to say that. I don't think she actually truly believes a lot of what she says because she just has a role in conservative media to be a blowhard. That's her gig. She's the blonde blowhard of conservative media. So good for her, I guess. But when you really look at it, it's not really that big of a deal. You know, financial experts have said this isn't going to hurt inflation. Studies have shown that people have put off things, major life milestones like buying a home, for years because of student debt. That's good, right? We should want everybody to be part of the American dream, or so they say. But when it comes to something like this, they just change their minds, and they find new excuses to justify economic suffering. And that brings us back to the original point. How will we pay for it? And I've talked about in these videos before, that's never employed for anything that conservatives want. It certainly wasn't employed for Trump's tax cuts. It's never applied to the military budget. And I'll show you in a second just how these two issues connect. When you hear these types of arguments, oh, how are we going to pay for it? Just ignore them. Just absolutely ignore them. They're not worth your time. They shouldn't be taken at face value. And they're deeply unserious, especially when conservatives roll this argument out whenever there's a social plan or a legislative action that could help some people. That's what they always say because they don't really care. They don't care about you. And that's the heart of the issue here. But on the military front, it was so interesting to see tweets like this from Rep. Jim Banks. Because what he's doing is saying the quiet part loud. By keeping people indebted, by keeping the cost of higher education high, it makes it easier for the military to recruit people. It makes it much easier for them to sell the GI Bill and the education benefits that come with it on military service. If you sign your life away, if you become a pawn for the military industrial complex, you can get your college paid for. It's not a fair deal. Recruiters like to use the benefits that veterans get after their time serving as a recruiting ploy. Because the social safety net in this country is so inadequate, it's rare that you can have all of your needs met elsewhere, and certainly not by the government. So for a lot of economically desperate people, that's the only way. That's the only way they can get healthcare, That's the only way they can afford a home. That's the only way they can pay for college, and that's not fair. It exploits this fractured system that leaves millions clinging on for life. That is so unbelievably predatory. What we really need to do is address the cost of higher education. Figure out an even more robust forgiveness plan with a long-term solution. We shouldn't have a system where the only way people can pay for college is to sign their life away for the military-industrial complex.